So it's really about the touch. It's about, the visceral connection you have to stamping your thoughts onto a page. Like, there's something really special about writing on a typewriter because, one, there's no delete button. You have to have a ton of intention in your mind before you write a sentence. So you also get natural compression on a typewriter too. Like, writers talk about compression and pacing and all that kind of stuff.
Welcome to the Stark Reflections on Writing and Publishing podcast. There has never been a better time for writers. More information, options, and opportunities are available to you, but navigating these requires insight. Join Mark Leslie Lefebvre as he draws upon more than a quarter century of experience as a writer, a bookseller, and a trusted book industry consultant to explore and reflect on the writing and publishing landscape to help you make informed choices on your writer journey.
Hello, Reflectives, and welcome to episode 250. Yes, landmark 250 of the Stark Reflections podcast. This is your host, Mark Leslie Lefebvre. In today's landmark episode, I have an interview with E.S. Curry. E.S. Curry is an insatiable Renaissance man who loves writing outside the data stream on a Royal typewriter while listening to classical music on vinyl. He plays piano and guitar, races his sailing yacht, fences, and imagines bedtime stories with his son. For over 20 years, he's worked with iconic brands around the world designing brand strategies and marketing campaigns, including Arnold Palmer, Olympics, Fashion Week, and numerous nonprofit initiatives. He's currently the marketing strategist for Findaway Voices, a platform that empowers authors and publishers to create and distribute audiobooks to reach listeners globally, and they are a sponsor for this podcast, but we don't really talk much about Findaway. We talk more about Scott's writing. Scott's also a former ghostwriter, and he published his first book under his own pen name, The Flying Sabuki, A Father-Son Nature Adventure, in 2021. He calls Cleveland, Ohio, and Great Lake Erie his home port. And what I love about this conversation is we talk about back to nature, we talk about simplifying, we talk about multiple formats as an author and why that's so important. We talk about the rules of three, and so much more. It is a fascinating interview, and that's coming up later in this episode. But first, speaking of Findaway Voices, here's a word from this episode's sponsor, and this was an ad that Scott had a hand in creating.
He's listening. She's listening. They're all searching for their next listen. Is your audiobook out there? If not, what's holding you back? After this, it won't be audiobook creation tools. Introducing Findaway Voices Marketplace, the audiobook creation platform built for a world booming with audiobooks. Voices Marketplace gives you a searchable and trusted space to connect with narrators, free production and business tools, and the power to bring your audiobooks to market quickly. We've heard everything you have asked and used that to build an audiobook creation platform for you. Plus, we give you access to the world's largest audiobook distribution network, reaching listeners through more than 40 retail and library partners. No exclusivity. You keep your rights. This is your audiobook creation platform. Ready to get started? Make it on Marketplace.
Longtime listeners to the podcast will know that I don't like doing the exact same ad read every single time. I love to talk about my own experiences on Findaway, but I just love the production of that. You can tell that audio was extracted from a video where you can kind of see some stuff happening. You can hear people clicking on keys and stuff like that. You know, the standard writer sound effects. You just can't hear the steam coming off the coffee sitting beside the typewriter of the writer. A typewriter, much like Scott, and I'm so fascinated as we talk about how he actually disconnected to go write that very first book that he imagined with his son. We'll be getting into that. But what I do want to share, since this is part of the ad read for Findaway Voices, it's a different one every single time, right? I never actually follow a script, do I? Is I love the flexibility of Findaway Voices. So you've got the Findaway Voices marketplace that you just heard about there. Or you can use Findaway's project managed process where you can enter your information in and they'll find between 5 and 10 of the narrators from their pool of thousands of narrators that they recommend to you. And they're, of course, at different price points. So you can DIY it. You can get some assistance from Findaway. Or if you have the audiobook all ready to go, you can just use Findaway Voices for distribution, so you can just upload it straight there. Always your choice. You're always in control. You can always find a way to find your way with Findaway Voices. That's a bit of a tongue twister for the really, really long-time listeners who remember that Will from Findaway used to make me do those painful tongue twisters as part of the ad reads, which I still think were fun. Let me know, dear listener, if you do remember those episodes and if you'd be tempted to have me do another tongue twister. Maybe we can, maybe I can be talked into that. Maybe I can be twisted into that. But seriously, if you want to see how you can use Findaway Voices as an author, you can check them out over at starkreflections.ca/Findaway. So I am going to forego comments again in this episode. One of the reasons is I am again on the road. So last Friday, I traveled to Victoria, BC, where I was with the Vera, Vancouver Island romance authors, and it was a wonderful group. They flew me out there to do 4 hours of talk about the world of publishing and a whole bunch of different aspects about it. A 2-hour session in the morning, break for lunch, 2-hour session in the afternoon. I also had the privilege and honor of getting to hang out with several of their members on the Friday night when I got into town. I was picked up at the airport. I was giving a couple of lovely tours of this gorgeous, gorgeous, beautiful Victoria, BC. And I have to say, and I was on the way to dinner when Kathleen was taking me on a bit of a tour and showing me downtown and a whole bunch of really cool spots in Victoria. I was reminded of just how absolutely amazing and gorgeous and different and beautiful so many different parts of Canada happen to be. And I'm so lucky and so privileged that I get to live in such a gorgeous country. I don't even need to leave the country in order to see so many beautiful sights. And that was on the west coast of Canada. And, you know, there's the Rockies just right there, visible from Victoria. We've got the East Coast, which is also just absolutely gorgeous. The only place I haven't actually really been, I've flown over many, many times, but I've never been to the prairies. And I am so curious to go and explore the prairies. But again, Canada has so much to offer. But back to this group. So I did that travel. I flew back on Sunday back to Ontario, and I drove straight from Pearson Airport in Toronto straight up to Sudbury. I got in around 1 in the morning, and I ended up, it was an extra hour to get all the way through Sudbury to where my mom's house is in Levac. I ended up just checking into a hotel so I could actually get some sleep because my very first appointment was in the morning, really close to Sudbury. It was only 15 minutes away from the hotel, so it was a bit closer for me. And I've been here in Levac where I am. It is Wednesday night that I am recording this. And I've done a whole bunch of errands, taken care of a whole bunch of things around the house and related to my mom's estate here. Just one of many trips I have to do over the course of the summer. But because I'm traveling, I'm getting up really early and I'm hitting the highway Thursday morning and hoping to be back in my bed in early afternoon so I can jump back on and get some work done, draft to digital, and also finalize some of the editing of this podcast so we can go out in the Thursday night feed. So that's why I'm recording this a little bit early. And you may be able to tell I'm using my mini mic, my mini Blue Yeti, as opposed to the big one. And I'm in my mom's kitchen. I guess technically it's my kitchen. This is my house because I'm the owner of the house now. But I still think of it as my mom's kitchen, as it will always be, of course. And so the sound quality is not quite as good. So I'm kind of going to shortchange some of the chatter parts, some of the Mark chatting parts at the beginning, and at the end I get back to comments when I'm back in my home studio properly with better acoustics, etc. But just gearing up for Lover's Moon, the romance novel in the Canadian Werewolf series that comes out on the 24th of May, which you've heard about if you have been listening for a while, several episodes back, and just gearing up on that. And then, of course, Julie and I have a bunch of stuff to do with the audio, which, of course, I'll talk about more in future episodes. And there was that teaser in last week's episode. So, going to forego the comments at this time, but if you want to leave comments on this episode or any episode, you can leave them over at starkreflections.ca. You can also message me directly or at me on Twitter. I'm at Mark Leslie. So without further ado in this introductory matter, why don't we get right into the interview with E.S. Curry. Hey, Scott. Thanks for hanging out with me here today.
Oh, it's a pleasure, Mark. Been really excited for this.
So, well, apart from the cool moving backgrounds that we have going on, we've got lots of stuff in our own backgrounds going on. Can you give my listeners a bit of a background on who E.S. Curry is?
Sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to. So I started writing for myself about 4 years ago. And I just published my first book in December of this year under my own pen name. I was a ghostwriter previous to that, working in marketing and advertising. And before publishing this book, I essentially set myself out on a path of training to become a writer and discover my own voice. So having written a lot of biographical stuff and quotes and things for my day job, I didn't know what my own voice was. So it was really important to me to discover what that is. And I wrote, well over 2 million words before publishing my first 20,000 word book. Dozens of essays, short stories, kids stuff. I have a 7-year-old boy. And I also wrote a memoir that's unpublished. And really, the impetus for wanting to become a writer for myself happened at a Fred Rogers conference. So Fred Rogers, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, I grew up with that television show. I used to work with Arnold Palmer, and I was at the Fred Rogers Center. They have a conference called Fred Forward for Early Childhood Development. And they asked, I wasn't there as a speaker, but I was there on behalf of Arnold Palmer's foundation. And they asked me to come up to stage the last day of the conference as a parent and talk about having presence over being present. And Mr. Rogers, really emphasized that having kind of a bubble with your child and being in it and not just being there, but having presence with them and really engaging with your child all the time. And after I gave this speech on how I taught my then 2-year-old son how to listen with his heart, and it was really well received. It was really cute. It was a great story of how I taught him to really listen to music and to cup behind his ears and put a hand on his heart and to really listen. And I've been able to connect with him ever since. Say, show me you're listening, and we can really connect and have presence together. And after that speech, a woman came up to me. She was, maybe in her late 50s, early 60s. And she just says to me, "I wish you were my dad." And I didn't even know how to react to that. I just said, "Thank you." And we started talking. We had a really nice conversation. And she said to me, she goes, "You have a really, really unique perspective on fatherhood because you grew up without a father, looking at all these other fathers, gleaning what you loved from all of them. And really being observant of what great dads did and what good dads did. And you work for Arnold Palmer, and you got to observe firsthand what a great man acts like, she's like, you need to write a book. And I really took that to heart, because she left me and said, again, I wish you were my dad. And I just need you to know that. I mean, what do you do when someone says something like that to you, Mark? I mean, it's pretty life-changing moment, So that sent me on the course of wanting to become a writer. And, I wrote this memoir for my son, like talking to him, but I didn't really feel like that was what I want my first book to be, under my own name. And we went up I go to the Adirondacks every year, a couple times a year, just to kind of recenter, there was no noise pollution, no sound pollution, reconnect with nature, evaluate. I always measure things in life on a scale of surviving to thriving. That's how I look at all aspects of my life, whether it's my relationship with my son or job or personal interests or things like that. And I evaluate it, in these trips. I think about all the aspects of my life, and I kind of check myself every half a year. And this 2 years ago, I brought my son Åsmund up there. He was 5 at the time. And it was just me and him. And we spent a whole week together, just the two of us, no screens, no phones. And we just connected. We told stories. And part of our experience up there was about mutual success in working separately and together. So he brought a 1,200 piece Lego pirate ship up there. And as we're driving up there, we're going down these meandering forest roads. And he says to me, Baba, do you know what a flying sabuki is? And I say, no, please enlighten me, And so he goes on to tell me, what they are. And you got to read the book to find out. It's the title of the book, The Flying Sabuki, A Father-Son Nature Adventure. And, all parents have these moments in life where they go, God, I really got to write this all down. I gotta write a book with all these things that my child says, like, these are the magic years, where his imagination is thriving and reality, can still, move a little bit, and I resigned myself in that moment driving up there that I'm going to write a book in a week while we're there. And we sat down at the table. He starts doing his Legos, and I say, all right, man, I'm going to write a book. He goes, oh, okay, that's great. Why are you going to write the book? He asked me. I said, well, do you remember what you did yesterday? And he's like, no. I go, that's why. Because the time that we have here right now is really special. And you're going to want to look back at that and remember that. So that was how we did it. So it's essentially like a little milieu of our time up there. And, we told all kinds of stories. I have this great game called Stories of the Three Coins. And, being a writer and advertising designer guy, stories are a big thing in our household. We read books every night, tell stories every night, whether we make them up or use story world cards or a story engine system or, play a game about them. The stories are everything to us because it's a skill in life that when you're a good storyteller, whether you work in business, or manufacturing or whatever, if you're the guy that can tell a good story, you can go far, So I want to make sure that he has that skill in life, that he's able to craft his own narrative. And exciting, like something really exciting happened this weekend. For me as a father, he wrote his own first story on a typewriter.
Oh my goodness.
I know. And it's a narrative, and he talks about me and him going on a quest together and finding gems and then playing and taking a bike ride. And he recognized he was using the word then too many times, and he wrote it all himself. They were his sentences. I only helped him spell things. And it was the cutest thing ever, seeing him punch on a typewriter, his story out, his words. And it was one of those moments in life where, as a parent, you just, you realize all that hard work, all those hours, all that attention and time, it starts working and it really pays off. And it's been a lot of fun. The book's been well received. We did our first book signing up in Lake Placid this year, and that was a ton of fun. He signed his name in cursive for all the people that bought a book from us, and he really enjoyed talking about it. And it was really funny too when they would ask him, like, what's a flying sabuki? And you go, well, you're going to need to get the book to find out. So I actually took that from him. So it's been a lot of fun, Mark. Yeah, I know, what a salesman, right? It's been a lot of fun becoming, my own pen name, and seeing the book get out there to people and reading reviews from people I don't know. It's been really well received, and it's super exciting to become my own voice and my own author and write about something I'm passionate about, which is fatherhood.
So you talked about your son on the typewriter, and I know that typewriters are a thing for you. So when you said you weren't on a screen when you were in this cabin, that meant you didn't have a laptop open? Were you actually on a typewriter there, or handwriting?
Yes. So we write on a typewriter. Yeah, we have matching Royal Quiet Deluxe 1956 Royal Quiet Deluxe. He has a red one I got for his 5th birthday.
Wow.
And I have a mint green one called Hemingway, and a turquoise one and a gray one. I kind of collect them.
Wait, you collect these 1950s typewriters?
Yes. A very specific model, just one model. Yeah, that I just love.
What is it about that model that you enjoy?
So I'm also a classical pianist. So it's really about the touch. It's about, the visceral connection you have to stamping your thoughts onto a page. Like, there's something really special about writing on a typewriter because, one, there's no delete button. You have to have a ton of intention in your mind before you write a sentence. So you also get natural compression on a typewriter too. Like, writers talk about compression and pacing and all that kind of stuff. That just comes naturally because you can only fit so many words onto a page. And you feel yourself getting to the end of the page. You understand where you are in the book a little bit more than, scrolling a wheel infinitely. So my first drafts and my rough outlines, I always knock those out on a typewriter. And then I've got a quirky writer, which is super fun. This is a mechanical keyboard.
Okay.
And it actually functions like a typewriter. It's got like a little return arm and everything. So when I do go onto the computer, I keep that same feel, that same tactile feel to writing, which is a lot of fun for me.
Wow. It feels like your life, your personal life, your connection to fatherhood, your connection to nature, and your connection to that tactile experience of writing line up just so perfectly. Like they're on brand, technically.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, I'm a brand guy. Like, I've been doing that for the last 20 some years, working for IMG, Arnold Palmer, Fashion Week, the Olympics, Nobel Peace Foundation, Hampton Court. Done all kinds of really cool big brand stuff. I really understand. Part of the last 4 years was finding my own brand.
Right.
What is that? Who am I? Because I've been the guy behind the guy for so long with so many different brands and celebrity personalities. It was about, finding myself and who am I? I know who I am now. I'm a guy that loves writing on a typewriter with a nice glass of scotch and, some hygge like lighting, taking that and, the next day going to race my sailboat escapade, that's who I am. So it's a lot of fun. Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about the parallel between the creative work that you did for that corporate branding or that personality branding and how you apply that into the actual writing itself that you work on?
So what are you trying to get at here, Mark? Like,
I'm just looking at the experience you have, probably doing a lot of copy, right? Which is clean and tight, etc. And then I'm wondering how that translates into your own process for for writing, fiction, memoir, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, sure. For me, it's about establishing, the persona. In marketing, we work on personas a lot. So, I wrote my own persona. I created my own persona, looking at myself objectively, working with a couple of my close friends, saying, I didn't write my actual author bio. One of my friends wrote that. Like,
Right.
That's not me talking. That's him, because it's really hard to write your own bio. I build my own persona. I create personas for characters when I'm working on them. Like even Åsmund in the book, I created a persona for him. What does he sound like? Look like, all that kind of stuff. And then for me, it's really about getting into a flow state, as it is with a lot of writers. And I'm sure you can understand that as well. Getting into, a frame of mind where you're not thinking about anything else, letting, first drafts are pretty easy for me. It's the editing that's the really hard part.
Yeah.
And honestly, I could crank out books if I didn't have to edit.
Couldn't we all?
I mean, it just kills me, the whole editing process. But taking, my experience with, working with brands and personalities, like you have to find the essence of a brand. And, a lot of times I create a word bank. Before I work with a brand, I work with a company or a personality, and I want you to write down words on Post-its and put them all up on a wall. And I want to see what are the adjectives, what are the things that encompass that brand. Then I start to put them into, kind of categorize them a little bit, and then dig deeper within each one of those words, and then find, the power words, the action verbs, the things that, really stand out about that brand or personality, and then bring those to life through story. So, that's kind of what we did here with the Flying Sabuki. And so when I was driving up here, we went back up this March to do another spring break. And I thought, could this be a series? Like, do I want it to be a series? I don't really know. It'd be really cool to kind of see him grow up and write one of these 20,000 word novellas every time we're up there. It's a lot to bite off, writing a book in a week.
Right. Yeah.
It's a lot of dedication. And he's talking on the drive up there again, and he's like, you know what? I've got a power-up gem that allows me to talk to ghosts, and it's really cool, Baba. He calls me Baba, he doesn't call me Papa. And he wants, he's like, I make that happen, And so I thought to myself, wow, this could be a cool concept, because there's a legend up in the Adirondacks of the Philosopher's Camp. Have you ever heard of this?
I may have. Do enlighten us, please.
No, it's cool. Back in the 1850s, a guy, William Stillman, put together a group of diverse men of different backgrounds, attorneys, doctors, physicists, artists, writers, poets. And one of these was Ralph Waldo Emerson. And if you're familiar with the work of Ralph Waldo Emerson, he was really big into transcendentalism and, existentialism and the connection with nature. He wrote a piece up there at the time called The Adirondacks. Really cool piece. He also very famous for his book called Nature, and about how humans connect to nature. And I'm a big advocate of this book called The Last Child in the Woods, where he talks about nature deficit disorder. The guy's name is Richard Louv, and he's pretty famous in the environmental world. And in this book, he defines nature deficit disorder as the costs of our alienation from nature, like the ultimate cost to humanity, because we have alienated ourselves from nature and being amongst it. So, our goal when we go up there is to, kind of remedy that, reconnect with the natural world, feel your connection to it, try and channel that atavistic kind of DNA. You know, I'm Scandinavian, so like I'm attached to the water, and really channeling that, you know. So we do that, and so we went up there, and this year, Ralph Waldo Emerson's ghost came to visit us in the cabin. So I hear the typewriter going in the middle of the night, and I go downstairs, and there's a note from him, and he basically signed it RWE, and I'm like, RWE, who's that? Ralph Waldo Emerson. So over the course of the week, we wrote back and forth to the spirit of Ralph Waldo Emerson. He actually gave me a posthumous quote on my book, which was pretty darn cool. So I kind of reinvented it. So the next book is called The Philosopher's Ghost, Camping with Ralph Waldo Emerson.
Oh my God, that sounds amazing. When is that coming out?
So that's coming out this year. So I kind of figured out my own kind of cadence as a writer too.
Okay, yeah.
So this is a big thing that, new writers. So you publish your first book and then you go, oh man, what am I going to do for the second one? Right. I got to market this first one and write the second one at the same time. So I've kind of figured out I'm going to go up there every March, write a book, do some editing until summer, raise my sailboat during the summer, and design the cover during the summer. And then in the fall, format it, finish all the line edits, and then publish, for Christmas. So that's going to kind of be my cadence, for producing books and, keeping work flowing. So it's because it's hard to do when you're a dad and you're working and, there's only so many hours in the day, as you know. So it's, you got to figure it out for yourself. And, I got up today at like 5 a.m., put some words on a page just to, I got like 800 words in, Yeah. It's about getting that word count in. So
I feel you. I was gonna actually mention as well, you also release in all three formats, or three formats at least.
Yes.
As opposed to just going, I wrote a book, I'm just going to publish whatever. So what's that like?
So I'm a huge believer in the three format author. I work in my day job as marketing strategist for Findaway Voices, which is an independent audiobook publishing platform. And I know you work for D2D, and our companies are partners and work together, which is great.
And Findaway Voices is a sponsor of this podcast.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I know.
That's right. I mean, and I wouldn't take them as a sponsor if I didn't think they were awesome.
It's an awesome company. Oh man, what a great company. And I love that we empower indies to bring audiobooks to market, because what's super cool about audiobooks, it's a whole different demographic. People that listen. In fact, I've had a number of my friends say, I'll wait till the audio comes out.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, they're not buying the ebook or the print book. And, print is still popular. In fact, the majority of my sales, I'd say 80% of them are print.
Yeah.
People still want a print book. Well, and part of it too is like the actual book itself. It's a nice, size. It's a 5x8. It feels good in your hands. I'm a print lover myself. I do audiobooks as well, but I don't do any ebook reading. I need the print book.
Right.
I'm old like that.
So, how did you do the audio for this one?
So, doing the audio, firstly, I auditioned myself.
Okay.
So
you auditioned yourself.
Yes.
It's like, I don't know if I'm going to get the job.
Yeah. No, right. Yeah. So, I do a lot of public speaking and things like that. I'm a teacher. I'm comfortable speaking and reading, and I auditioned myself for the book. Will Dagus, the head of Findaway Voices, recommended to me. I was like, should I self-narrate this thing? He's like, you should just audition yourself and then go on to Marketplace, which is Findaway Voices' new product where you can go in and audition narrators for free. And I listened to a number of voices. Turns out I have really good taste because I picked some very expensive narrators. And Åsmund listened as well, my son. Yeah. So he wanted to be, have a say in the voice of the story as well. And we ended up landing on Craig Van Ness out of the UK. Okay. Really great guy. He's got a mid-Atlantic accent, much like myself, where he's got just like hints of a British undertone. It's definitely not a British accent, but some words come across that way. I've done so much work in London, so sometimes, I'll naturally just kind of say something with a little British accent unintentionally.
Yeah.
Working with the Brits for, decades, it just happens, I guess. So he did a wonderful job, and it's coming out soon. But, my big mistake was not releasing all three formats at the same time. So this is something I preach to authors in my day job. You need to have a simultaneous release. You want to have all three formats come out at once so you can maximize your launch plan and your marketing team and all your marketing efforts to get all those initial sales. But I wanted to give the book to Åsmund for Christmas. So my actual official publish date was Christmas.
Right.
It was my gift to him that year.
Okay.
So, that's why I didn't have the audio paired with the ebook and the print book. Yeah.
Okay. Wow. And you didn't give yourself the job. I think that's a sign that you wanted.
No.
Yeah, you wanted the best for each format, right?
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. Yep.
And that's not to say that you're not a good narrator, that you're not a professional or anything like that, because you are. It's just the voice that you found was more in line with what you wanted for that particular audiobook, I guess, right?
Absolutely. Yep. That's what I wanted. In fact, I'd love to compose my own music to go behind the audiobook. I ran into an author that did that, and it was super cool. I know people play at 1.1, 1.2, 1.5x speed, so it wouldn't work necessarily, but I'd love to one day, compose a score to go with it at 1x speed. And I think it'd be really cool because there's a lot of moments in the book, that are nature focused. Every chapter opens up with, the sunrise and, the circadian rhythm in the Adirondacks. Like, you have no choice but to submit to it.
Yeah.
So when you stay up past sunset, it feels really late. Like, it does not feel natural. It feels like the world is coming to a close for this day, and you need to go along with it. And when the sun crests behind the mountains over the lake in the morning and shines through your windows at whatever time that is, the time of year that you're up there, you wake up. Yeah. It's time to get up. It's not time to hit snooze. It's time for your day.
So that's beautiful.
Something magical in that, isn't it?
Yeah. You reminded me of, there was a company that was around for a while, and I don't think they exist anymore, but they were called Book Tracks. And the idea was that there would be musical scores to the background of an ebook that you were reading. And it was based on the actual read rate.
Yeah.
The audio would be in time so that if there were tense moments in a piece of fiction, it would be almost like a soundtrack to a movie. Ooh. And I had even done some experimental stuff with a short story where I even included some sound effects when you like, and you hear them running through the trees and the sound of dogs barking as they're chasing them, and you can hear the wind and stuff like that. And it was a neat experience, but difficult.
I love Foley art like that, like the old Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, radio broadcast with the Foley artist doing all the things. Oh man, that stuff's so good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have this book coming out in December again this year.
Yep.
Which will be the second one. What else? Is there anything else in the works that you have on the back burner? I
do. I've got a couple really good projects going. I've got a fiction series called The Corona Crown. And that basically takes the pandemic and it posits the question, what if this is the next evolution of humanity? Versus destroying it, versus, making it better. Really, really cool. I'm about 3/4 of the way through the first book. I've got a 4-book series mapped out on how that'll play out. And it so far, the beta reads have been fantastic with my writing group. They're all in. They love it. And then I'm working on a nonfiction book. Talking a little bit before about my experience as, kind of a brand architect and marketing guy for bigger brands, called Author Brand Creator, and creating your own author brand, kind of from A to Z, with steps 1, 2, 3. Taking this approach, every letter of the alphabet, taking one of the, some of the key elements that begin with that word of your entire author platform, giving you some knowledge behind that, and then giving you, 3 actionable steps. I think, a lot of nonfiction books, they take you through concepts and everything, but, a lot of people kind of need that, just how do I get going doing this?
Right.
And I'm a big believer in the rule of 3s. I approach everything with the rule of 3s, like 1, 2, 3. The human brain can remember 3 steps. You go a little bit more than that, and you got a lot of fall off after that. So, I'm gonna continue plowing away on that, and I think that'll be a really great resource for authors. Taking that experience, with Fashion Week and Arnold Palmer and the Williams sisters, and I've worked with so many different personalities and brands, translating that into an author brand. I'm always amazed that romance authors don't do more kind of personal licensing, licensing their worlds and creating products out of that. And, I mean, pretty much every romance author could have their own private wine label.
Right,
They've got to dedicate. I mean, if you've got 50,000 people on your email list, go to a private label winery and you make your own wine. Like if you sell like 10 cases a year, that's 10 cases a year. I mean, it's brand building, So
well, I'm going to have you back on when you release this book so we can talk a little bit more about that aspect of it. I loved chatting with you about nature and fatherhood as well. And Scott, can you please let my listeners know where they can find out more about you and your writing online?
Sure, yeah. You can visit my website at escurry.com. That's simple. Sign up for my email list, and I'll send out cool emails with all the latest news. And I'm putting together something cool for these too, Mark. I'm going to do book ciphers. You know what a book cipher is? So it's like, have you ever seen the Da Vinci Code?
Yeah.
It's kind of like page number, line number, word number, and you have to kind of go through the book.
Okay. And there's going to be messages in the book. Like okay, that's kind of cool.
He loves stuff like that. And we were talking about this the other day, and I made one of these up for him. He's like, you should do this with the Flying Spooky. I'm like, oh man, great idea. So one of the things I'm going to do too for him is I'm going to create a book cipher that's just for him. And it's going to have latitude and longitudinal coordinates. And I'm going to put this in my will. And so after I pass, he's going to get, a set of book ciphers, and he's going to have a new adventure to go on. And he's going to have to go to all these locations, and he's going to find something that I bury for him. And he's going to have one last adventure with his dad, even after he's gone.
Oh my God.
So that was something.
That is amazing. Absolutely amazing. Scott, thank you again so much for the inspiration and for hanging out with me here today.
Absolutely, Mark. Thank you for having me on the show.
What a fascinating conversation with Scott. Now, there's 2 specific things that I wanted to sort of call attention to and reflect on. And the first was, so Scott's been in marketing for a long time, building brands, all those things. He's an expert at that, and he's helped and guided organizations and personalities in that role. So we know he knows what he's doing. But then he spent 4 years writing millions of words to find his voice. And that's something that we sometimes don't allow ourselves the time for. Finding that voice. It's kind of like, it's this long, long warm up and trying something again and again and again. And then finding that groove, finding that flow, finding that voice. And it may only come with, we go back to the Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hours of putting in the time, because you may experiment with, and my voice as a writer changes, different things that I write, different genres that I write, different styles, nonfiction versus fiction, different kinds of nonfiction. The voice is definitely different. But that's part of finding your voice, part of finding your voice for a particular genre, part of finding your voice for a particular brand within your larger author brand, for different kinds of narratives that you create. And it's okay then to create things that never get published, that never get sent to a publisher, that never get seen by anyone, because these are the things that you did to warm up. These are the practice exercises. These are the times you've tried and fallen and maybe nobody sees. So just remember, if you're a beginning writer and you haven't yet found your voice, that's okay. Give yourself time, give yourself lots of practice, and you will find your voice. The more you play, the more you write, the more you get through that. So I just want to remind any writers who are either beginning writers who haven't yet found their voice and are worried about that, or even writers who've been writing for a while and may be adapting and changing what their voice is, or discovering that there's a different voice that wasn't the one that they were originally starting with. That's okay too. That's part of the evolution of being a writer. The other thing I wanted to reflect on is just when Scott was talking about Emerson, and I know I'm a huge fan of Thoreau, who was a student of Emerson, the whole concept of connecting and communing with nature. I mean, look at what it did for him and his creativity, as well as his relationship with his son. And it reminds me of the value of what I get when I have those moments where I am connecting with the physical world around me, and not just the physical world of a city with all the conveniences and the technologies, etc., but the physical world from nature. And I'll be doing a lot of camping this summer and hiking and things like that, and even running. And I love running through paths and trails because it feels like I'm more connecting with the ground. I'm more connecting with the surroundings when I get the opportunity to do that. And I was thinking that it kind of relates to that, the typewriter and the tactile experience of purposefully pushing those words out letter by letter on a physical machine, not on a screen. And I was reminded of the time I started when I was, a kid. I just found, I had wondered where it was, but my mom had kept it. It was my very first literary rejection at the age of 15 years old. I had sent a dystopian post, sort of the world ends due to nuclear war, because I was fascinated by that as a teenager. A story called Nullification that I sent to CBC radio contest, a literary contest. So it was kind of like a horror dystopian story. And it's this rejection I got at the age of 15, and my mom had written how old I was, the original submission, the returned manuscript, which had been typed. Yes, it had been typed on my mom's Underwood typewriter. And just how precious that was to me. I talk about getting my first rejection at the age of 14 or 15. Obviously, it was 15. I thought it was 14. But I had been writing. I started writing when I was 14. But I was thinking back to, especially since I'm back in the house, the typewriter. That my mom did actually get rid of it. I was really sad to learn that she got rid of it, because it's probably about 8 or 9 years ago, I came back home and was looking for it. She goes, "What are you doing?" I was like, "I'm looking for the typewriter." She's like, "Oh, I gave it away." And that was disappointing. But I'm thinking, especially listening to Scott, I was actually looking online at some Royal Deluxe typewriters and seeing, well, $200-300, not bad. It would be interesting to get one and see what my experiences is like going back to the typewriter. Because I know just how powerful it felt to me when I was 14 and 15, and I did use that up until probably the age of 17. But I'm curious to see what that would do to me now, the age of 53. I guess, yeah, I am 53 now. But anyways, those are just a couple of things I wanted to reflect on based on this interview with Scott. I hope you enjoyed the reflections. I hope you enjoyed the interview. If you have any reflections of your own, I'd love to hear them. You can share them over at the show notes for this episode 250 at starkreflections.ca. You can message me directly, mark at markleslie.ca, or at me on Twitter. I'm at Mark Leslie. So until next week and next episode, this is Mark Leslie Lefebvre wishing you great writing, excellent connecting and communing with nature, and good Stark Reflections.
Thank you for listening to the Stark Reflections podcast. You can find show notes for each episode at starkreflections.ca.
The music for this podcast, Laser Groove, was composed and produced by Kevin MacLeod. Check out more of Kevin's great music at incomptech.com.